Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. One of the ways to think about our deen is to reflect on a tree. All of you are aware that a tree has a trunk, and then from that trunk come branches, and then from those branches, just as an example, there can come fruits. For example, if you consider an orange tree will have a trunk, and it will have branches, and at the tips of those branches, you will find fruit. Islam, our deen, can be considered the same way. Our scholars say that one way to think about Islam is that it has a trunk, and from that trunk arises branches, and from the branches arise fruits. So what is the trunk? The trunk is our faith. The trunk is the Shahada, La ilaha illallah, Muhammadur Rasulullah. This forms the trunk of this metaphorical tree. Once the trunk is established and a person recognizes that there is nothing worthy of worship except Allah, and that there is no greater pursuit than the pursuit of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, what naturally will arise from the person is the next step, which is to follow the sunnah of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and from that will arise the acts of worship. Now, acts of worship come after a person appreciates the Tawheed of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and the need to follow the messenger of Allah. That's the consequence of that, right? The first step is the Shahada, it's the trunk. The consequence of that is going to be the pillars of worship, which are the remaining four pillars. So from this trunk, the natural consequence of this trunk will be that a branch will grow, which will be called salah. Another branch will grow, which is called fasting. Another branch will grow, which is called zakah. And another branch will grow, which is a desire to perform hajj, and eventually the performance of hajj, if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala facilitates it through the amount of wealth that we have. So you have a trunk, which is the shahada, and you have branches, which are the acts of worship. So what are the fruits? What's the fruit of Islam? What's the ultimate production of Islam? It's a person's manners. The ultimate consequence of our deen and the fruit of our deen is the way that we behave. Is the way that we behave. That's the fruit of this deen. And if a person wants to see the health of their tree, you can just compare it to an orange tree. If there is an orange tree, but it doesn't give orange, then you would say, this is a tree, but it's not an orange tree. And if there is a tree, but it doesn't give a sweet fruit, but it's bitter, then you would say, this is an orange tree, but it's a bitter orange tree. So the same way, if we want to know the status of our Islam, is our trunk intact? Are the branches how they're supposed to be? The ultimate manifestation of that deen will always be in the way that we behave. That's the ultimate expression of deen. How do we speak? What are our manners? How do we deal with one another? Do we control our anger? All of these different types of manners, the way that we behave, behaviors and manners, that's the ultimate manifestation of deen. Now, the example of that is the example that's shown on the screen for the hadith of today. So this is from Bukhari and Muslim, in which the Prophet ﷺ mentioned, Al-Muslimu man salim al-Muslimun min lisanihi wa yadih. The Muslim, the true Muslim, is the one from whose tongue and hand other believers are safe. Now, it's very interesting. If you tapped any Muslim's shoulder on the street and you said to them, what's Islam? They would say, Islam is that you testify that there is only one God. There is no deity worthy of worship except Allah. Muhammad ﷺ is his messenger. And then you got to pray 5 times a day. And then you have to fast in Ramadan. And then you have to give zakah. And then you have to try to go for hajj. This is the way we would define Islam. You ask anybody, what's a Muslim? You ask anybody to write an essay, what's a Muslim? This is what they're going to write. It's ironic or interesting that the Prophet ﷺ is defining a Muslim in a very different way than you and I would normally think. This statement doesn't say the Muslim is the one who says this, the Muslim is the one who prays that. It's giving the very, very final stage of what Islam is. The ultimate expression, the ultimate manifestation of Islam is what? Is behavior. You want to know who's a true Muslim? Look at the fruit. Is the fruit there? Is the fruit bitter? Does the fruit taste good? That's what's going to define a Muslim. So look here, the true Muslim is the one from whose hand and from whose tongue all other Muslims are safe. Now the question should be, this is the question we should ask ourselves. We're here in this month judging our Islam. So really, just using the paradigm that I established, we're judging our tree. Is our tree producing the fruits that it should produce? Well, here's what the fruit should be. It should be that when we speak, no one is ever harmed. When we speak, no one is ever harmed. I never speak ill about a person behind their back. No one should be harmed with this tongue. And I never say something to a person that will break their heart. No one should be harmed by this tongue. That's the ultimate fruit of Islam. Similarly with the hand. My hand should never transact in such a way that brings harm to another person. This is a fruit of Islam. And by the way, these are just two examples. Many examples you'll find in a hadith in which the Prophet ﷺ defines the mu'min or the Muslim based on the way that they behave. That's the key part of Islam. That's the fruit. And the benefit of these types of narrations and the general principle of our deen is that it allows us to be able to reflect on our Islam from a top-down approach. What do I mean by top-down? Look, most of the time, you don't think about the air conditioner, right? You turn the air conditioner on, it's working. Most of the time, you don't think about the air conditioner. When do you think about the air conditioner? When it's not blowing cold air. If the air is not cold, then you say, wait a minute, there's something wrong with the air conditioner. You go top-down, you say it's not blowing cold air, so something must be wrong with the AC. Let me go deep into the air conditioner to find out where the problem is. So the same way with every Muslim. We should ask the question, how do we behave? Are we walking around cursing with this tongue that was meant to praise Allah? Are we walking around using our eyes in ways that we shouldn't? Do we speak softly? Do we have respect for one another? Do we show kindness at the appropriate juncture? Do we withhold our anger the way that we hope that Allah will withhold His anger from us? These are the ultimate fruits of Islam. And if we don't see these, then we can ask the question, if the fruits are not coming from my tree, then where is the problem in my branches? That's the question to be asked. And that's the way by which we're judged. The Prophet ﷺ mentioned in one narration, and we'll close with this, the Prophet ﷺ, he asked the companions on one occasion. He asked the companions, tell me who is the bankrupt one? So they said, the bankrupt one is the one who's lost his wealth in some business transaction. So the Prophet ﷺ said, no, that's not the bankrupt one. The bankrupt one is the one who comes on the day of judgment. They have good deeds. They have lots of good deeds. But they harmed this person. They wronged that person. They were backbiting against that person. So what happens? All the people that they wronged come and take their deeds. And then, when all the good deeds are extinguished, because we wronged so many people that our deeds are just being distributed to all the people that we wronged, then when they find that there's no more good deeds for us to give, they say, okay, then you take my bad deeds. So the person started with what? A mountain of gold deeds, and the person ended up with what? The stench of people's sins who they never even knew. So we have to be exceedingly careful about the way in which we behave. Yes, we establish this trunk, La ilaha illallah Muhammadur Rasulullah. And yes, we establish the 4 pillars of worship, Salah, Saum, Zakah, Hajj. But the ultimate manifestation, the ultimate expression is always going to be in our character. How do we behave? Do we lie? Do we cheat? Do we curse? Do we yell? Do we scream? Do we blow up? These are all characteristics that are not concordant with all of the branches and the trunk and the branches of our deen. And one of the beauties of this month is that we should be able to look in the mirror and reflect upon what is our tree producing. Is it producing fruit? Is it producing bitter fruit? Is it producing sweet fruit? And it's this character, by the way, that in the end becomes the ultimate da'wah to Islam. Because what is the greatest call to the tree other than the fruit? When the fruit's tasty, everybody comes to the tree. People will come to the tree for the fruit. People will come to the tree for shade. People will appreciate the tree. They'll bring water to the tree. They'll preserve the tree. They'll respect the tree because it gives them something. If people see this in our lives, that we behave differently than all the people around us, that we answer to a higher calling, that we stand tall when everybody else goes low, then they will naturally be attracted and say, where is this fruit coming from? Why is it that none of the world deals in this way, but this unique group of people, they exhibit such unique character? What is driving it? What's producing it? And that brings them to the tree. They begin to see that there's a trunk called the Shahada. They begin to see the acts of worship, and they're brought into the beauty of it. And that's how Islam spreads. You can't force Islam down people's throats. We can't force it down our own kids' throats. We can't force it down our neighbors' throats. You have to win them over. And the way you win them over is the only way is through the character, because that's what people interact with. That's what they see. That's how they judge us. That's how we, in fact, are going to fall in love. Not only will people fall in love with us, but then we will actually be respectful of ourselves. So, yes, Islam has a trunk, which is the Shahada. And yes, we have the branches, which are the pillars of faith, or the pillars of worship. But the ultimate manifestation is this fruit. And here the Prophet ﷺ is teaching us what a true Muslim is by pointing us to the fruit of that Muslim. So what is a true Muslim according to this narration? Al-Muslimu man salim al-Muslimun. The true Muslim is the one whom other Muslims are free from their tongue and their hand. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make us amongst those who exhibit good character. May He strengthen our trunk. May He extend our branches. And may He make us amongst those who produce fruits of great character. Wa akhiru da'wana anil hamdulillahi rabbil alameen. Just one quick announcement for today. And that is that I've mentioned this several times, but it's so important. The only mechanism that we have of staying in touch with everyone here, both during this month and for the next 11 months that will follow, is for each of you to be part of our text message system or email system. You can choose either. And the only way we can do that is to have you register online. This allows us to recognize who you are. It allows us to be able to communicate with you essential information such as major programs and also the 5 daily prayers, what time they'll be held, when the timings are changing, etc. So if you haven't yet become part of this list, you can scan the QR code on the screen, or on the way out, these signs are also present both in the men's and women's parts of the masjid. You can scan that QR code on the way out. We ask that each of you register. There's no fee. It's just a name, last name, first name, I think zip code, and your phone number. And that allows us to be able to stay in touch with you. It allows us to be able to count you amongst the people that are here. And it allows us to be able to ensure that we're servicing everyone in a way that's most appropriate for them. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala allow us to be able to unify our hearts, and may He make us stronger together. Wa akhiru da'wana anil hamdulillahi rabbil alameen.